Okay, I got all the sealer cleaned up there where I need to get it clean. Now I forgot to put these 2 bolts in initially in here, so I had to put them back in there. These duplicate the motor mount. You have the motor together, so if you don't put them in there now, the sealer has a big lip built up right there. If you don't put those in tight now, the sealer will dry thicker than it's supposed to be and cause a problem. So I already wiped these off, and you already see how the sealer pushes back up above the surface because I squeezed the cases all the way down. So I have to come back and clean these up. What's nice about the 3-bone, it just kind of rubs away as you do this. You see how it makes a little bit of a mess initially, and then just keep rubbing on it, and it comes off. There you go. No mess. Okay, so now what I gotta do, I gotta move on to the oil pump area. So the oil pump has to be timed. I have not taken this oil pump apart, I only pulled it off the bike, so these gaskets are still in there. I only have to replace the bottom gasket is right here, which is this one up here. I do need to get the speedometer drive in here before we get too far along, because that needs to get put in also. That uses this little gasket right here. You can either use it or not use it. It goes right into here. Because usually what I do is I put sealer over the thread area, and on the shoulder here where it threads in, and on that lip, and that pretty much eliminates needing sealer on anything. I mean the gasket. But if I have one that fits in fairly good, I'll use it. This one seems to fit pretty nicely and snug on there. See, it's a nice good fit, so I'll just go ahead and put it in there. But, a lot of times they'll split on you and cause problems, so hopefully it's not going to be one of those deals. Okay, get the tripod set back up. Get the rest of this going. So we use the same 3-bond sealer on this that we used on the rest of it here. So what I do is I put a little bit of sealer right there on that lip to begin with. I'm not too bashful about gooping this piece up, so more the merrier, within reason. Okay, and I put the gasket in there, and then I put another good layer on the outside. So layer a nice good layer all the way around. No sealer. Make a good fillet of it in there. I'm also getting the threads here all the way around. Just like that. So now we got a really good layer of it in there. Tighten this up and put it in there. So you made a mess right there. Okay. Whatever doesn't want in the hole is going to pooch it all out all over the place. Trying to keep the wrench out of it. Not a lot of room in here for the wrench, as you can tell. Okay, good and tight. Pretty much don't like screwing with it, but make sure it's got a good sealer lip where you can see it. Now you just let it sit in there, and that's just one more layer of goop around it. So you can't get that out or can't fix it once the motor's in the bike, so make sure you got a good layer of it in there. Okay, now I'm going to put the oil pump in there. Find the bolts for that. That's going to be these chrome ones right here. So we get to pick out the bolts. Should be 5 of them. And 5 lock washers to go with them. Three of them. 3 to lock washers anyway. And that too. Another one. I'm only missing the one. There it is. There's the chrome one though. Okay, so I got all my hardware. And these are about 2 inches long roughly, I think. Yep, 2 inches long. 1/4 about 2 inches. Okay, use my gasket cinch for the gasket sealer. It goes on gaskets. Try not to plug up the holes with it. Okay, we'll let that set up for a minute or so. Lay it on in the correct way, it doesn't hurt. Make sure you line up the holes. Okay. Grease. Tools away when you're done with them. Okay. Put a little bit of grease on the shift shaft seal right here. Kind of got access to it before I forget. Leave that open for now. I don't have to worry about putting the whole oil pump together because it's already assembled, so all I can do is just mount it to the case. Now the pump also has to be timed, which we will do here in a little while. So there's a timing hole right here. You can see the hole in the body there. It's right here. That has to line up with that notch right there when it's on a timing mark for the front cylinder. Now the timing mark on these old bikes is a line that is not top dead center. That's on this bike it's 40 degrees after top dead center, or before top dead center, excuse me. The earlier bikes is 45 degrees. So you want to get this somewhere in the mark. Sometimes over here, sometimes over here, but it needs to be in this area. So for now we just put it in because we can put the gear in here later at whatever point we want to. Whoop, right here. So we have to make sure we just have that right. So I'm going to put that in there right now where I got it. Now we still got oil in there from when we took it apart, so I don't have to re-lube any of this. Now there's a screen that goes in here And this well right over in this area here. Let's see it with the camera on the tripod. I don't use that screen. You get the breather cavity right here. And the screen kind of sits right where my finger goes. You see how the hole's is teardrop shaped. So you get the round pump here, goes in here and holds the screen in. The screen keeps the stuff from coming into the pump right here. It comes in here, then it blows out through here, blows up here all over the cams. The way I look at it, if you got enough crap over here that it's blowing through your breather to cause a problem for the cams, your motor's blowing up anyway, so it doesn't matter. Take the motor apart, fix it. You don't need a stupid ass screen in there. Back in the old days, I used to pull the top ends apart all the time, and you probably did 10 top ends to every lower end at least. 5 was not uncommon. Nowadays, it's more like 1 to 1 or a couple to 1. If you use good components. Okay, make sure I got the gasket in there. Okay, get it in there all the way. I'm not quite all the way in. You get the oil in there for the pump already. So I'm going to put a couple bolts in here. Make sure they're all started before you put the pump all the way up in there. You want to make sure the gasket's in there where it belongs, so you don't want to have any of the holes blocked off. Make sure this gear slips down past the body. Yeah. Some bikes you can't slide the gear down, but I think I only had to happen a couple times on Sportsters. But just double check it just to make sure. Could be a problem if it doesn't work. Okay, now I go ahead and get all the bolts started. This one's not happy, it's tight. Okay, once I get all the bolts on there, I just push this down all the way. You have a certain amount of float. I tend to float it up a little bit to make sure I got more room to get a line in this side. And I always tighten in the middle, work my way out. So you do that one first. And you get that one. And that one. That one. And this one last. And you repeat. Put a little more torque on it this time. And you put final torque. Now, earlier bikes have an actual, they have studs in here instead of bolts. So just a little bit of oil pooching out a little bit, but it's in there. Okay, after you put that in there, you want to make sure everything rotates. So you want to come over here and make sure your pump rotates over here like it's supposed to. So it's rotating. Oop. Got that laying there. Go ahead and put that on, that's why it's laying there. Okay, where's my hammer at? Okay, these get used. The screws put a little dimple in the plate here, and that makes the gasket not seal very good. James gives you this fancy gasket. Most of the time these split and don't work. What happens is when you tighten the screw down a little bit, the cover will dimple. This thick gasket will split and split right in half because the gasket material is way too frail. Now, I don't know if they changed their gasket material yet, so we'll find out. More than likely it's going to split. Yeah, we'll see what happens. This has silicone on both sides, so you're not supposed to add any sealer to it. I always add sealer. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go ahead and dimple or hammer this back flat with my steel hammer. What I do is I put it over the side of the bench, and I just tap it right here, and that flattens it. So you go right down here like this. Doesn't take much pressure, just a little bit. And that takes the little dimple out that was in there and knocks it back out. If you lay it on there on the table, it shouldn't have much of a flip. If it flips up on you a little bit on the edge, then you know you got a dimple in it still. So that one's pretty good. So this takes these little screws here with a lock washer. Takes 4 of these. They're usually a straight slot. So we'll put that in there. Go ahead and put that in there. So I'm going to take my 3-bond and put a little sealer on the back of the case here. So they got some nice good silicone there, but a lot of times it's not thick enough to seal them. And you want to make sure you don't put too much on here because that is bearings are right in here. You don't want the seal to go in your bearings. If you're going to make it a little extra thick, make it extra thick on the bottom. Put a little bit on here. See, I'm going to keep away from that seal area. Remember, it's going to squish in a little bit, so don't put too much right there, but you do have to get above that hole there. Okay, so that's how you do it. So I wipe my fingers off when I got a little bit on there. That way I don't transfer a bunch of sealer onto my container, which doesn't transfer to my tools or my other fingers. For some reason the hammer's got a little bit of oil on it too. Wipe that down. Okay, we take our gasket, lay where the 4 holes are. You take this and do the same thing with it. Kind of squish it around a little bit to spread it. And make sure the sealer's nice and uniformly spread. Bigger screwdriver slot. So I like to torque the hell out of these, but like I said, you can't do it because these flimsy ass gaskets. So you got these really light torque, which is not what I want to do. I like torquing the hell out of it so it stays tight. Put a little bit of torque on it, an extreme amount. You want to put enough torque like this. So I'm not going like this, using my fingers like this, just squeezing them. Mainly with just these 2, not even the other ones. Not too much torque. Okay, we'll let that sealer just set up over that, not screw with it. I'm not going to wipe off the excess. I'm just going to let it bond on there. A little extra right there ain't going to hurt anything. I'm going to take a little bit of grease. Put it there where the seal goes. a bunch more up behind where the bearing race is. You'll see why in a little while. It's always good to do that when you got access. Okay, so now we got everything on the bottom here done except for this plug, which I haven't found yet. It's going to be in here someplace. See, I got a timing hole plug. Not seeing that drain plug. So hopefully it's in one of the other boxes someplace. Again, remember don't forget to put that in there. I like doing that before I put the motor in the frame because the frame gets close sometimes. Most of the time you can still pull the plug in and out, but not always. These other plugs are already sealed up before, so I didn't touch them. Okay, now we come up here. Trying to get the oil pump set up in there. Okay, this is our oil pump drive. You got the back side, you got the front side. The front side's cut flat, the back side is recessed. That way it won't interfere on the spline in here. Let's see, right down in here, in case there's a lip or something. Now this one here is see the mark in here where it's cleaned up, been rubbing against the inside of the other gear, which is cam drive gear. These just pretty much just bounce against each other. This one's free to float back and forth, but the load pushes against this gear, which pushes this gear against the cam cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on there. This timing marks doesn't mean a damn thing, but if you look at the spline, you can see how these three are narrow and this one's fat, and the top one here is fat on the pinion shaft. So this basically just means it goes up, in case you're too stupid to see the slots wider. It only fits on one way, so it goes on that way, it doesn't go on this way, not that way, not that way. Oh, it goes on again. So you got 4 opportunities, 3 right, 1 wrong. Figure it out. Okay, the crank has to be set at timing mark. Now basically, your top dead center is right here on the case. Oop. Yeah, let's pull this back a little bit. If the crank pin's right here, it's top dead center. If the crank pin's back here, it's 45 degrees before top dead center. This motor times at 40 to 45 before top dead center. So that means the timing mark on the flywheel is going to be when the rod's over here. So you put the rod back here toward the center of the motor, and then put your oil pump drive gear here. You have to rotate this back a couple because it winds up on you. And then you see where the mark is. So right now my mark's way over here instead of over here. And I'm holding the crank kind of in the center toward the front, just slightly forward of the center point of that. We'll go check the time marks in a little bit, but for now that's close. So right now the mark is way over here, the hole. So you pull this out, rotate a little bit further over 1 tooth. Not quite 1 tooth, there it is, go back in. And the mark is right there. Now about 1/8 inch from the back of the crank is about where it is. This goes on here, and this is basically just almost flush with this, but not quite. And it's 300 thousandths from the from the gasket surface here to the gear when this is wind up, is installed. This recesses into the cam cover, which is right here. This is 300 thou recess from this surface here to here. This gear runs up against this surface right here. So the gear installs 300 thou sticking up from the gasket surface. So the oil pump has to be timed with this 300 thousandths from the gasket surface. Sometimes these go on easy, most of the time they go on hard. Ideally they go on hard. This one's going to go on hard, so I'm going to leave it there. So if you lay it in there, get your scale, you have 300 thousandths. If you don't have 300 thousandths, just figure 5/16 of an inch, close enough. That's 312. So you just lay it in there until you got your 5/16, or 300. So basically it's just almost flush, but just above it. And how far do we got to go more? I only got about a 1/16 of an inch from the back surface. Now, if you want to adjust it, you have to grind the gear shorter. That's one way you can do it. Either that gear or this gear has to be cut. Usually I cut this one because it's easier, but I've done both. Okay, so right now we want to make sure we're about half a hole off right now, so we want to go over and check our timing mark. Make sure we are close to where we need to be. So, I was about right there, and there's no timing mark there. There's a timing mark way back here. So here's our timing mark right there. Pull the camera off so you can see what we're going to do. There's no real way of keeping the crank from turning, so see there's a timing mark right there. You can kind of see where the rod is at. See if I can hold that. Okay, this timing mark here is 45 degrees, so this has early flywheels in it. See how it's dead center in the hole? They changed the flywheels in 72, so 72.3, they changed the timing, went from 45 degrees to 39 degrees. So this is where we're going to be. So this one here is going to be dead center in the center of the hole is where we need to be. So we rotate this back around and try not to rotate it. It went slightly forward, but there. So we're almost a full hole off still. So I'm going to pull this out, go one more tooth, slip it back in. Obviously I went 2 teeth. There we go. So we come back about 50 thou. So we're a little bit early or late, depending on how you want to put it. So let's see where we're really at. About there is about where the timing mark is at. And the crank just turned some more. So we're retarding the timing a little bit right now. So we're going to be kind of either advanced or retarded, depending on where you want it to be. Everything's got play in it, so it's hard to tell where it's actually going to be at. That's about what the timing mark is. The crank keeps turning every time I move it, so. So you make it about centered. Out there. It all looks good right there, except for one problem: we're not where we need to be. See how that crank pin moves over there? I can see it moving. See, I can't let go of the case and do this. So we're going to be way advanced or a little bit retarded. So it's a little bit closer to being retarded. So I need 2 hands to do this because I can't hold it and check it at the same time. I need 3 hands to do this job, and 4 if I'm using a camera. So I'm going to put this over here so maybe you can kind of see. First thing you do, you take a screwdriver and put a hole over here. Okay, it's in the hole. Now I got to deal with this one thing. So we're that far off. So if I shove the pinion gear all the way in as far as it'll go, it helps us. Now if you go backward 1 tooth, you can see how all the way in we're full tooth on the other side. If we came out that far, which is about over 100 thou, the timing would be right on the money. But to have it ride that far out, we would have to cut the gear. You'd have to cut a big chunk of this gear, or half of this lip would have to be cut off to do that. So I don't particularly want to do that. So you want it being a half a tooth one way or the other. So either advance it or retard it. So I usually go the other way. Put it over here. Put it here, beat the gear all the way until it's all the way in no free play, If the gear is tight, it'll stay in there. If the gear is loose, it'll float out. And that way we're only a third of, or a quarter of the tooth off, or a quarter of the mark, whatever you want to call it. And I got the timing mark being held in the center of the screwdriver, so that's how you do that. So I'm going to leave it in this spot here. So we'll go ahead and put this one on here. Right like that. And I beat that on with the sockets, what I use. Grab one of my big sockets. Make sure it won't hit on anything. I'm going to go a little bit bigger than this one. Use this one, so it's a 13/16 socket. Once again, make sure it clears everything. It does. So it won't hit it. Okay, get the camera out of the way so I don't nail it. Now, we don't want to hit the crank too hard because we'll knock it out true, but we got to hit it hard enough to put the gear on it. Now, there is a tool that threads into here that pushes it on, but I don't know if they even have one of those tools. But I've seen that strip out a lot of times because these go on there too tight, they don't go. You can heat these up with a torch, makes them maybe slightly easier, but the thing is, once the two metals hit, they're back to common temperature. There's no difference. So I pretty much just tap them on with a hammer. You just light hits. I'm even using a plastic hammer, not even a steel hammer. Every time I hit it, it's moving. It's getting a little harder now because it's almost all the way on. Here it's all the way in now. Okay. Now that shouldn't have been enough to affect the crank truing. If you start getting a big steel hammer and start whacking on it pretty hard, you can knock it out true, definitely. Okay, so now I got it all the way in there as far as it'll go. So I'm going to back this up. Do my screwdriver check. Right there. And we're half a hole back. Like I said, we're right in between the two spots. So with all the free play and everything, it makes it a half a hole back. I don't know if you can see it right there, but I'm going to blow it up a little bit. So the little hole's right. The groove is right on the center of the upright. It's dead center, half a hole back. And I got the gear all the way in. So like I said, that retards the timing a little bit of the breather. I don't know if advancing retarding is better or worse, but it has to do with the pressure from this gear cavity. The pressure from the crankcase, the gear cavity, which you're controlling. So anyway, as you go slightly further forward, it comes in time. So if you had later flywheels in it, it would be closer. Right now it's about 25 degrees and it's almost dead nuts, so we're about 20 degrees retarded probably. Like I said, you even make it retarded or advanced. This one's pretty much dead center in the middle, so not much I can do about it. It's one of those deals where you live with it. Or you start shortening gears up. Like I said, if you want to cut the gear way back, advance it one tooth, it'll come in about, you can get pretty damn close. But is it worth all that work? I have my doubts. Okay, so that's in there for now. So there we go. Alright, so that's a good place for a break right this minute. Let me get some of this stuff out and I'll be back.